Resume recording. Look, so kia ora, everybody. I'm called John Carapiertaho, and I'm doing this webinar as part of the Auckland Festival of Photography. Let me share my screen and get into some of the slides, and I'll do a little bit of introduction then. So this is my screen. This is where I play, and hopefully you can see that clearly. Thumbs up from the audience that you can see that okay? Thank you. Well, look, kia ora, everybody. Welcome. Ko John Carapierdaho. I'm a photographer in Auckland, but I'm doing this webinar so that anybody from anywhere in the world could see it, and hopefully there'll be a few people watching it. Um, I've given it a bit of a daring title, AI and the Death of Photography. And the reason why I did that is because I do think something very serious has happened in the last few years with the effect of AI on photography, but actually all media. So I know that this is contentious because photography will always exist and it will continue to exist in parallel with whatever else goes on. And I'm certainly not diminishing classical traditional photography. In fact, if you stay through the presentation, you'll find that I've ended up there. But my point is that, yes, of course, the rumors may be exaggerated. Um, as a famous quote from Mark Twain went, his death has been exaggerated. He's not dead. And of course, photography is not dead in itself. But I guess the reason for giving it that very challenging title is because I think that it may have died. And what I want to do is share with you some of the thoughts around that. But for a long time, there's been a debate that has photography died? And actually, from 1863 right through to 2022, long debate continued. No death of photography recorded. No one said, oh, look, photography's just died. There was all that stuff about digital coming and replacing film, obviously, all the apps and things that we can do things with film and prints. But no one said photography had died. But something had happened between then and March 24, when it was very much clearer that there was something major going on. Could you actually spot the fakes anymore? How to spot AI fakes for now? And I think within months, the slightly deformed hands that used to get in AI pictures had kind of been solved. A whole lot of things were much more convincing. So for me, maybe March that year, 2023, or rather March 2024, something had happened that could just be the death of trust in imagers, but I'm thinking it might be more. In fact, I'm going to lay a date on the line and say 2023 in some way marked the death of photography. And so the rest of the presentation is sort of like, how do I justify saying such an outrageous comment? Maybe not all photography died. As I say, photography will continue on. So it's not about the end of doing what we've done for many years and new stuff. But something died. And I guess the rest of this presentation is about, well, what died and try and tease out what died. And is it photography itself? Or is it something less dramatic? Is it just belief in photography? Although that in itself might be a pretty pessimistic outcome. Or is it more that has died? And I'm completely along with the fact that there's a lot of optimistic and positive things about AI, not just in the medical uses and all those sort of things where they can scan cases and identify things that the human eye can't. But the new creativity opportunities, efficiency as photographers, as artists, almost any field of life, and imagining new things with AI. So I can see there's a good side. I guess my theme is the what's happened to the traditional side of photography and trust in that. So I just want to show you a few slides, which is the evidence that the death of photography in the title is not exaggerated. I want to give you dates of death, and I want to give you some lessons and examples from another project that I've actually just finishing called AInthropology, as in AI anthropology. We'll come to that shortly. But I'd like to give you the date. And this is the date of the death of photography. And, give or take a few days if you don't want to be plumping to an actual date. But in March 2023, Boris Elkinson won a very prestigious Global Photography Award with an AI photograph that he hadn't told them it was AI. And this is the image, I think was the winning image. And He was one of the finalists, and he wanted to tell the organizers that this was a big issue. AI is arriving in our world, and here's an amazing photograph. But he didn't tell them till after he was in the finalists and after he'd won, I think. So they really wanted to like silence this because they were embarrassed that this AI picture had won a photography award and the conversation had started. So in a way, good on Boris because he really did cause this to happen. But nothing's been the same since. By 20 May 23, there was an article saying, can you tell these photographs are artificial? And hopefully we can, but the average person may no longer be able to tell any of these sort of things as being fake. Some other dates in the journey. March 23, Donald Trump posting completely artificial images. I would say the death of credibility. So even if it's not the whole death of photography that we're talking about, here's a slice of the death of credibility. May, I call it the death of trust in journalism or photojournalism or the death of photojournalism. A very clever spark decided to make up some pictures using AI of photojournalistic topics. And in that way, he threw photojournalism under the bus because now every photojournalistic image, whether historical or not, can be doubted. 2023-24, and this is not a particular date, but across this period, I wanted to show you these because this period marked the death of performance photography, at least a credible level, before anyone says, hang on, is that real or not? The guy at the top is the binhead man from the UK, who is actually, this is an actual photograph. He campaigns, politically against the mainstream. He wears a bin on his head, and this is him outside of Parliament. A real photograph, not AI. The one on the bottom, a lot of people thought it was a real photograph, and there's an Indian artist who was posting these images, and people thought he was photographing his South Indian mates in the Kerala backwaters. And then he announced it was all AI, and his following went up, and people loved it. Fake photography, but an AI photograph. But the difference is now meaningless to some extent, unless you're there to watch Bin Man. And in November 23, I actually did a show called Legacy, and that was about using AI reanimation of the dead, or rather, it was actually using reanimation to almost deanimate the living. And I didn't put it on the site itself, but I guess my shock at AI reanimating dead people and making them move around, which led to this project, kind of marked, and again, I exaggerate, but kind of the death of death, at least the death of photographic death, because you can carry on bringing people to life. In March 24, another nail in the coffin, the death of photographic history. In one day, someone made, I'm not sure how many, 20, 30 pictures of the most famous pictures of our times, all recreated in a day. A slightly more trivial but still meaningful March 2024 death of royal family photographs. Maybe all family photographs are going to be critiqued now, but that hit the headlines and had to be pulled. And in June 2024, I'd like to call it the death of common sense, because what happened was that a real photograph got entered into an AI segment of a competition, won third prize, and then got kicked out because when he told him it was a real photograph. Now, games and nonsense, the picture went viral. So this is the problem with this is the end of common sense. Some kind of game being played with an ordinary picture and a very ordinary picture at that. I mean, I think everyone has taken the back end of a duck with its head tucked in. This is the same thing with a flamingo. But for the fact, oh, won third prize, I'm not sure it even deserved that. Maybe I'm being a bit mean, but third prize and then announce it's not AI. I mean, this is nonsense, but it went viral. So maybe it's the death of common sense. The final section of this little presentation, I wanted to share with you some evidence that maybe the death of photography or the threat to photography is not being exaggerated. And these are what I've called examples or lessons from AInthropology, which was a project I started, and I literally started to play with AI last year and in late 2023, as you know, from that work. So there's a number of covers for the idea of the anthropology, and it was going to be a book. And when I say it was going to be a book, is because the bottom line of the title explains it all. It was a brief experiment in AI photography that really put me off. Now, I'm not saying I can guarantee never to use AI ever again. Maybe as a design feature, I'm not sure. But as a photographer, this journey, which I'm about to share with you, pushed me away from AI for various reasons, not just the ones we've seen already. Interesting images. They're all interesting images. This is one of the things that this very seductive, amazing images I'll show you. And you could do them in a half an hour in your own time later, asking AI to create anthropological pictures of tribesmen, groups of tribesmen sitting in a road, a bank of a river, things like that. This one you can start to see, if you can see it on your screen. The arms are joined in the middle. They might have a couple of extra feet as well. I was kind of interested in that in late 2023. I mean, it's all old hat now. Everyone knows the deformed hands are spotting a way of spotting AI images, but that's been solved. So there are no longer deformed hands. So these are old AI images. They're already over a year old, and they won't get the light of day except here. This was on the right, a picture by Stuart Robertson, which was one of the lead pictures in the photo festival last year. And when I saw it, I'd just been playing with the AI, doing these anthropological images, and I really thought, hang on, is that AI? And unfortunately, that is the future of all of us. When we're looking at any image for the rest of our lives, it'll be, I wonder if that's real. I wonder if it's AI. And in this case, I was reassured and very positively so that this was not AI. This is a real work. But I compared it with these images that AI has churned out for me, literally churned out, stolen from every image the AI has ever been trained on, and thinking not that different. Of course, they're completely different, but something's died in terms of our trust in the difference between them. Again, a couple of people with no heads, very strange eyes, lots of eye illnesses and deformities just dotted around the people in these images. And there's a long history of interest in human physiology in photography, but it's got a dark side. And then one of the reasons why I was thinking of doing this book is because various other themes are emerging along with AI and photography in our world. And one of them is eugenics, not articulated as eugenics, but the idea of ideal people, of superior people, of making a better human being is part of the ongoing discussion without being articulated so clearly as the history of eugenics has. I mean, I guess my point is eugenics didn't go away, it's back, and it's with technology. And there is the ultimate journey into eugenics, which is transhumanism, or rather, I'm not sure it's a journey into eugenics, but it's a parallel line where humans and machines will merge and be synchronized in some way. People talk, and I'm not an expert on this, but people talk about the singularity, which would represent the culmination of our biological thinking and existence with our technology, resulting in a world that is still human, but that transcends our biological roots. And that's my point in the last few minutes of this presentation. The singularity and overcoming or transcending our biological roots. Now, I'm not sure I want that, but anyway, that's what this is. And I looked at these pictures, and again, I'm going to show you a few. These were the group shot. Very strange, if you can see them, very strange eyes, all stolen images. And I feel very embarrassed even sharing these pictures because I know that behind the images I'm about to show was a real person. And they've been merged by the AI with other real people that was these lovely anthropological photographs of and made into this person. And seductive and amazing and beautiful. And any photographer would say, yeah, I'd be proud to have that in my portfolio. But it's again very deformed eyes, a few extra hands. But these ones, when you get these stunning portraits, hybridization of history, stolen from our collective shared inheritance of photography on Earth, and the AI is raiding it. I mean, this one's just absolutely stunning. I don't know who this man or the man who's closest to who lived like this, but he's probably changed now through the AI to be someone who we wouldn't recognize them if they walked up to us. But these are real people somewhere in history done to. Another one, stunning, but not real, stolen, AI, challenging our very fundamental understanding of what it means to be human, and certainly what a picture is or a photograph is. And then these last two pictures, different platform. I think this was on Night Cafe, and I asked it to create some more pictures, male nudes, female nudes, and then this is the cover that I ended up using. And it's the last time you'll see some of this work, apart from maybe online, where the promotion of the book or the idea of the book and this talk is continuing. A brief experiment in AI photography, and let me tell you why. So, what shocked me, and just going back, the work I did in 23, which was the Legacy Project, de-animating living people in response to the shock of AI reanimating dead people and making it a kind of symbolic time travel thing, looking back in time from the future at these people looking dead, that kind of trying to pass through the machine rather than being used by the machine and controlled by it. So I was trying to pass through the gates of AI to some other paradise on the other side. But that was driven by a shock of seeing AI reanimating dead people. And it got much worse since the 23, 24. Even this year, I think the Chinese were marketing a grief counseling app where you could have your dead grandmother hugging you in a photograph, animated. I guess there's a fee for this, and depending on how long you want to remember your dead relative, you'll be paying the ticket to get that emotional succor from AI generated comfort. But in this case, it was again another shock. And that's why it's just a very quick end to this presentation because it was so shocking. I'm not even going to show you the pictures. But it was about their representation of human biology and how it looked and what it meant. And it might mean nothing, but I thought it meant something to me. So the next slide does include imagery, nude imagery, not totally nude, and I'll explain why. But it is a warning. So if you don't want to see slightly naked people, this is the time to not watch. And I'm only going to put up the picture for a very short time. It's the two pictures you've already seen, but full body. And the reason why I'm not going to show you the full pictures, apart from like, I'm sure that there would be some kind of sensorial kind of need behind not showing you them. But when you see them, and I'll describe them to you, because once you see them, you can't unsee them, one of those sort of things. And it really confused me as to say, well, why would the AI, with a straightforward prompt, it wasn't like saying, "I'll make these people look really weird." A straightforward prompt, do this. Why would come out? Why would this be? So I'll quickly show you the pictures. On the left, the Caucasian man had a vagina and a penis. The African man had two testes, which sounds right, but it was just two testes. It wasn't anything else. So interesting, shocking, weird. And I guess the question is, why does this matter? Why does it matter that if you asked AI to portray the human body, it's not just the hands that were bad once and now fixed up with AI, but our gender and our identity as biological beings. And it kind of makes sense because the AI has never been one and never will be one in the foreseeable future. And so why would it understand what our biology is? It's only learning it, and it would only learn it from photographs. But it was very spooky. So my final kind of points on this matter. Is it just the spook factor? Is it just that it was really weird that this man should have, both genders of genitalia, or the other one only have some semblance of it? I felt that this said something about AI and our relationship with AI and AI's relationship with us. It doesn't know what we are as human beings, as biological beings. So it really shocked me, and we'll park that there. Oh, John's shocked, isn't going to do that again. I guess that, and that's the conclusion, that AI is shockingly good. Those amazing pictures that I won't do a book unless someone begs me to and says, "Oh, this is great, mate." But you can go and do it. You can type in the same sort of things into AI and you can create a great book with these amazing images. I guess what's the point? So going back to that graph, I do buy that some people are very optimistic and certainly covering up any pessimism with, oh, it's going to be creative AI, it's going to be more efficient AI, we can have new imaginings with AI. But I'm still in the pessimistic, and not just for the photography lens, but lots of, excuse the pun, but lots of other things. So where I ended up, and this is my final slide before we finish up, was that the work I'm about to show in the Auckland Festival of Photography is called Peace Mona Lisa. And it was created as part of that project. Originally, it was one of the images in Legacy, but it stood out. It stood out as very different from all the other images through history of people. Maybe because the Mona Lisa is it is probably the most plagiarized, copied images. And an image that I never, ever, ever, if you'd asked me in the last 20 or 30 years as a photographer, will you do an image of the Mona Lisa? I'd say, of course not. What a stupid thing to say. Why would I go and picture something that's been copied 1,000 million times? And then I did because it came up. It came up in the project. And when I saw it, I realized that it had a life of its own and identity. And particularly because it's a response, a bit like the weird photographs that I just showed you. It's a response to other weird photographs of the Mona Lisa created by AI largely on the internet, where people have run amok with their imagination and AI to make some really horrible images. And it goes back to I guess it's a kind of like psychological and almost spiritual thought or thought experiment about photography with a history behind it that says, does a photograph capture the soul? Or does a little doll that you stick pins in voodoo, does that actually have some kind of relationship with the subject, and therefore what you do to the image or what you do to the little doll has some kind of effect. Now the voodoo people but definitely believe it. Historically, some of the people in those ancient anthropological photographs would have said, hang on, you're not taking my soul, are you, Mr. Colonialist photographer? It would have been a Mr. probably, maybe a Mrs. But the reality is that I felt that it was time to pull out this photograph from all the others and give it its life of its own as a meme of peace, a meme of peace for the Mona Lisa. It's called Peace Mona Lisa as almost like a kind of a blessing peace Mona Lisa. You don't have to look at these horrible pictures that are online now. You don't even have to look at us and the gaze, Gaze, of the photograph, the looking out, or painting, but the looking out, looking back. When you lose the gaze, which is what the legacy work was all about, something changes. The person becomes a little bit more able to be viewed without that challenge. And for me, the person who's portrayed with their eyes closed in this series and in this work has gone inside, either meditating or at peace, in some way to contemplate their legacy. So the reason why I ended up on this photograph, and it is a photograph with a negative, is that I've gone to a very nostalgic view. And I think that certainly photography hasn't died if you take a nostalgic view of all those ancient processes, or not sorry, ancient, but 100-year-old processes, cyanotypes, pinhole cameras, all of that will not die. In fact, it's probably going to be more enriched, except of course that AI will then copy those pictures and create a pinhole camera that isn't a pinhole camera image, etc. But that was really where I wanted to land on, because for me, with AI so powerful and technology so unbelievably out of control on everything, not just photography, but in images, in video, in audio, um, the negative and the photograph and the original shot is coming into its own. So without further ado, I'm going to come back to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to come back to the audience and I'm not sure we can ask any questions. So I'm going to probably draw it to a close there. If there's anybody who has any urgent questions, if you can maybe go into the chat unless I've disabled that. This is my first experiment with a online webinar. So I hope that it's a little bit shorter than I thought. I hope that you've been able to follow it along and hear me and see the slides okay. And I will call it a day. Because I think unless there's any ability to turn on the chat, I'm not going to be able to. Show chat previews. I'm not sure what that means. No, I won't. Well, so Kakite, thank you very much for joining the webinar. I'm sorry that I haven't got a chance to do questions and answers, but I would say thank you very much for attending and watching and for your interest. And I guess have the debate. Has AI killed photography or not? And if it's not photography that's killed, what's died? What's changed? And what does it mean for our society and our worldview? Kakite, thank you very much.